Hello, everyone. You're about to experience my interview with Kris Harrington. Kris is the CEO and co-founder of Gen Alpha. Gen Alpha has their own e-commerce platform called Equip360. And Equip360 is a B2B e-commerce platform for the automotive and heavy equipment parts, OEM, and resellers. It is an amazing interview, and it really discusses and addresses the power of vertical specific B2B e-commerce platforms. Welcome to B2B Commerce Corner. Commerce Corner is a sub-series of the eCommerce Edge podcast discussing all things B2B commerce through the lens of agencies, consultants, merchants, and more. Enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. It is my pleasure to welcome an amazing guest today who's going to tell us all about her incredible tech platform for the vehicle industry. I'm happy to welcome Kris Harrington to the podcast today, and she's here to represent her Gen Alpha technology platform. And welcome, Kris.
Hey, Jason. Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
It's my pleasure to have you. And we're going to talk about your Gen Alpha Equip360 SaaS platform. But before we get into that, why don't you just tell us really super quickly how you even came to be in this space? Now, it looks like you have had quite a bit of experience in the automotive, heavy equipment, heavy industrial space. You spent time at Caterpillar, Bucyrus, etc. So I'm guessing this was just leapt or was an extension of your experience, but tell us how you even came to be into the B2B SaaS software space around automotive and equipment.
Yeah, you hit on it. So really what happened is that I worked many years for a large manufacturer of equipment in the mining industry. And that's really where I cut my teeth on the aftermarket. So we had to sell parts and service to support the large mining equipment that went into operation around the world. And if a piece of mining equipment went down, it could cost that mine operation hundreds of $1,000s an hour. You never wanted to have the equipment be down. So when you worked in the aftermarket, it was high energy, it was high responsiveness, and we also had high growth and high expectations for revenue because the aftermarket can be a very profitable part of the business for any equipment manufacturer. And that's predominantly what we work with is OEMs, original equipment manufacturers across multiple industries, typically the heavy duty industries, including specialty vehicle. But one of the problems that we experienced as a manufacturer is that when our products left the factory, the materials that we sent, and typically back then they were manuals and parts manuals, but those parts manuals became obsolete almost within weeks because when the equipment went into operation, part numbers were changing, there was obsolescence, supersession of parts, there were alternative part opportunities, there would be upgrades to the machines. And many of these machines had a 5-year, 10-year, 20-year lifespan. So over that lifetime, they need maintenance and support, and you needed good documentation when the equipment owner or operator needed to repair that, whether it's under an emergency because something broke and needed to be repaired quickly and go back to work, or whether it was a planned shutdown and maintenance of a unit for standard maintenance procedures. We always had to have the parts there on time. So we were trying to solve the problem of keeping equipment information up to date, but in the hands of those equipment owners and operators the moment that they needed it. So we really wanted it in today's day and age at their fingertips, which is really what digital solutions allow us. So we were solving for that problem and we saw the need. We started the company 12 years ago, and the use of digital tools to support equipment just keeps growing year over year.
And so would you consider your platform effectively a B2B e-commerce platform specifically targeted at these types of OEMs, special vehicle equipment and aftermarket equipment manufacturers? That's really almost like a vertical specific B2B e-commerce platform.
You got it. We are niche to that space.
Absolutely love it. And so I'm guessing that because of the nature of your industry, there are so many different nuances. When you start getting a B2B e-commerce in itself, I know because I serve that industry, B2B e-commerce is complex. It's much more complex in many respects than B2C or D2C e-commerce to begin with. And then I guess when you start to verticalize your platform, you're dealing with all the unique nuances of your vertical to tailor the platform for all those nuances. And I notice on your website here, you speak to some of those really specific requirements that are unique to your niche: interactive parts manuals, product configurators, product registration, warranty management, analytics, etc. And all of these things are really unique to you guys. And I know that, for example, I haven't had to buy these types of parts online from a B2B perspective, but I have had to buy them online as a consumer. And for example, for my motorbike, and I've had to buy off of dealers where they've got their dealer parts e-commerce system where they have to have parts explosions and they have to have call outs and hotspots to specific components or specific bearings of a specific part. And it is a super just automotive full stop. And I'm working with a client now that's both B2C and B2B for four-wheel drive parts. And I guess I'm really sensitive and empathetic to the complexities of anything related to automotive, but I guess especially when you get into heavy equipment and you're getting into hydraulics and you're getting into very large parts that are made up of many components, your industry is super complex.
Yeah, you've highlighted some of the largest challenges, right? And that's what we're trying to solve for. You mentioned the complexities, and beyond that, normally when a user, again, either the customer or the dealer needs support from the manufacturer, it's under an urgent situation. So not only is it complex, but there's the pressure of the time, that how quickly ultimately, somebody who buys a heavy duty piece of equipment, or even for me, when I buy a tractor for my farm or a UTV or even a lawnmower, things have to be ready and available when I need to use them. So it's also that pressure situation. But yes, you're right. There are a lot of complexities in the business to business area, and we like to believe we've solved for a lot of those, and we will continue to solve as more and more of the digital gets adopted. We started as an e-commerce, interactive parts manuals, and analytics solution, and it really has been at the request of the manufacturers that we work with that we add things like RMA, which is return materials authorization. It's different for you and I when we buy a pair of shoes online and we want to return those. That's not a very complex process. But now imagine that you've purchased a $250,000 component and that needs to be returned. That's why there is an authorization process. There's a workflow that goes with that. We've digitized that to make it easier for equipment owners, operators, and manufacturing dealers to check the status of their RMA, to see where it is in process, to see if they've gotten their credit, to make that, to actually request the return. Similar on warranty for these large manufacturing organizations, oftentimes they sell a piece of equipment to their dealer first, but the warranty period really hasn't begun yet because the dealer hasn't sold it to the end customer. You need a process for material receipt so that there's a process of recognizing that the dealer has received something. Historically or traditionally, that would be forms or emails. It was a convoluted process. Now we have that MR, a dealer can log in to the digital platform. They can register that they've received the unit. Then when they sell it to a customer, they can then do the product registration and formally register that for warranty. And when the dealer needs to do any particular repair work on that, they can file the warranty claim and everything digitally. Again, moving away from forms, emails, and spreadsheets that traditionally have been a part of some of these more complex processes. These have been by the manufacturers we work with to include them in our tools, and that's what we've done. Just like the product configurator, for anybody that's used a CPQ tool, selecting your various options and seeing the pricing or seeing how that changes the look and feel of the product and or the price related to that option, and quickly delivering a quote for a large complex piece of equipment historically takes a lot of time and a lot of handoffs, and we try to improve that process for manufacturers as well. Yeah, where we once were really just solving the digital commerce side of it, where it was a transaction for parts and services, we've now expanded to be so much more than that, really dealing with all the after sales support needs of a large organization.
Wow, what a super complex vertical for you to try to meet the needs of. And there's two things that leap to mind for me in B2B that we have to deal with that are sometimes a little bit unique. And that is BOMs, so bill of materials, and MOQs, minimum order quantities. And in the B2B world, these two things take on a whole new life of their own and a whole new meaning of their own because of the complexity oftentimes of those products, the way in which replenishment workflows work, the way in which MOQs work, the way in which kind of almost the indent model can sometimes work, where you've got maybe an MOQ, a minimum order quantity, but then you've got an indent MOQ, which is, okay, we have to receive X number of orders for this product across all of our customers. And at that point, then that triggers off the manufacturing process once collectively we've hit enough of a threshold to make that product. And then that can finalize the order. BOMs, bill of materials, oftentimes managed in an ERP, but elements of that expected to be managed by the e-commerce platform as well, especially for kits and bundles and other types of product combinations. So I'm guessing you have to deal with these types of things in your platform as well.
Yes. So try to touch on both of those. For bills of materials, really what we do is we repurpose what exists for manufacturers today. And this is an area of our business where we are a service arm for our manufacturing clients, because we know that often tech pubs can be a backlog area. And again, to go back to my initial conversation about the problem we were trying to solve, is getting that information updated quickly can be challenging. So what we do is we get a bill of material, typically out of an ERP system, and then we get all of the tech pubs and the engineering 2D and 3D related media, and we digitize that for our customers. So they are safely providing us the information, and we use our automated tools to digitize those and bring them to life. And then we become a part of the ECN process, or the engineering change notice. So as those drawings change, or as the bill of materials change, or the supersession and obsolescence, we get notified and we do the updating so that that information through the digital commerce platform is updated. Now, on the MOQ side, minimum order quantity, certainly we try as often as possible, and you alluded to this as well, to have the ERP be the safe source. So we have integrated to multiple ERP systems, and this is just an area where we have to understand how our customers are handling MOQs today. If it's working inside the ERP system, then we just manage it through the integration. If there's something that we need to do special in our database to handle something, and then push it to the ERP when an order is created in the e-commerce side, then we will do that. But these are, yes, complexities that typically there's no one answer for how it's going to be done. It's really sitting down with the manufacturer during discovery and saying, okay, how do you handle MOQs today? Show me. And then we talk about the options available with Equip 360, and we solve for that. What we really try to do is make it easy for the manufacturer, because if we changed every process that they ever had, then this could be very overwhelming to them when onboarding a new solution. And typically by now we've seen everything, so we usually have a few alternatives that we can offer them that are going to work.
And how do you guys typically handle product attribution? Now, historically, on the B2C, D2C side of the world, especially nowadays, a PIM, a product information management platform, would be very typical and very common as part of the commerce stack. And typically you would get, for example, your base product data, you would get the name of the product, the SKU of the product, maybe a short description of the product, maybe the price, and of course the inventory quantity. All that stuff would come from ERP, but then everything else would come from the PIM. So the ERP base product data would go into the PIM, and then marketers and salespeople would use the PIM to further enrich the product information with all the unstructured and structured product data, product attributes, color, size, all the different things that are associated with that product, all the rich media, all the videos, all the imagery, etc., would all be loaded. The PDFs, the tech sheets, all that stuff would be loaded into the PIM, and then on its way out to the digital channels, then you can slice and dice that data any way you like before it gets to the e-com channel. Now, in your case, I am guessing, but correct me if I'm wrong here, that you guys have to be, by definition, a bit of a mini PIM in the sense that, yeah, sure, you get this base data maybe from the ERP, but the marketing side of those businesses or the branding side of those businesses may have some additional collateral that needs to be provided to the dealers and resellers, et cetera, for point of sale, for tech sheets, PDFs, all sorts of content that they may need to repurpose themselves throughout their business, even printed catalogs, et cetera. And do you guys consider yourself like a light PIM in that scenario where marketers and the brand people on that side of the business are working directly in your platform? Or do you still connect to third-party PIM systems in some regards to augment what's coming from the ERP?
Yeah, so great question. I think we have one customer, I almost said zero, but one customer who is utilizing a PIM today. So absolutely, we have to have a light PIM solution to support those clients who aren't yet using, maybe a more sophisticated PIM solution. So we have a great backend database and our administrative tools that allow the manufacturer to put all of that data into our admin, which feeds into the database that will do all of that part attribution, categorization, filtering, and so on. Oftentimes, for many of the manufacturers that we're working with today, this is the first time that they've ever really utilized attribution in a way that it's going to make it easy for a customer to identify what they need to buy. Now, I will say that for many of our manufacturing clients, their customer is going to the bill of material and looking at a physical drawing, so call outs, or they're interacting in a 3D drawing where they can click on the components and identify what they need. So the attribution area is really a secondary way to find parts if for some reason you're not going into the online man. So attribution, to answer your question, yes, we support in a full PIM type setting for customers to handle that type of information. And often they need our advice and ways to think about that and categorize their products to make it meaningful to the customers when they come there.
And how good or bad, I guess as the case may be, are you finding their digital capabilities inside the business? Meaning you said you already have the ability and the services to be able to turn, say, for example, a complex part drawing, which might be in a CAD file format, or it might be purely in a PDF format, et cetera. And you have to be able to intake all of these different types of documents, particularly technical documents and diagrams and explosions. And then you have to be able to link those to actual products in the catalog that are easy to click through to and add to the cart, et cetera. And be able to effectively break out all those in almost like a grid format or a table format underneath those explosions to where they don't have to click into a product and then back out again. Whereas if they want to buy an entire assembly, then they can just go 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 all the way down the column of components of that assembly. This is a very complex thing because you're receiving data, I'm guessing, in a wide variety of formats, depending on how advanced digitally some of these suppliers are. And I'm guessing some of them are pretty old school in how they do things. So there's no universal format of data that you're receiving. And so is there, I guess, white glove approach that you have to take with these brands? And are there humans involved in a lot of this stuff? Or is this stuff that you have completely digitized where you can effectively scan any data format, you can identify all the callouts and the parts, and you can effectively link them to products in the database? Or is there a lot of hand-holding and kind of manual account management effort usually required on your part to make all this work for them?
Yeah, certainly it's going to depend on the business and the structure of their data and the types of tools that they're using. But you are correct in that we handle multiple types of file formats. So sometimes we're receiving physical technical publication documents that have already been touched up and cleaned up and sorted. The exact parts from a full bill of material will have multiple levels, but many of those levels you wouldn't sell to your customers. So we remove those. And it's really walking through in a discovery session with ours what is important for the customer to see and looking at the data and the available file formats that they have today. So what we do, Jason, is we take the information. So usually what's happening with a large equipment manufacturer or specialty vehicle manufacturers, they're taking their legacy equipment that they've sold, so their installed base that's operational out in the field, and they are digitizing everything of that nature first. So the types of products that still need support today. So we take that legacy information, and because we're doing it all at one time, we can save on the effort that is invested. And typically, because we are doing it electronically and we have an automation process, if it's modeled, typically there might be serial numbers, but they are from the same model. So there's high amounts of commonality. So once we touch a file type once, as long as that same file is utilized across 50 or 500 other units, we only have to touch it once. That's what our automation process does, is it moves it into that next either serial number, VIN, or model category that we're going to use it. So commonality, which is typically pretty high across manufacturers. It's higher than many people even think. That's where we're able to save them a lot of time through our automated processes. You're correct in saying there is no one standard solution, but again, because we've handled so many different file formats, really we just take a sample data, we process it, we show the customer how it looks in the software, and then we say, would this meet your customer's needs? We might modify a few things, but then that becomes the standard we use as we process all of their serial numbers, models, or VINs.
So in other words, if they only have, say, for example, if they don't have an Illustrator file or they don't have PDF files for you to ingest, but they only have, for some reason, these print blow-up catalogs, for example, then you would literally scan and digitize. You would take it from the paper format, bulk scan all of those sheets, import them into your system, and then start the recognition and linking process from that point onwards.
Yeah, if we had to do that. Now, I don't think we've had to scan anything for about 5 years. And typically that's because most of the companies we're working with today, when they go back and they say, let's look at the legacy, where our opportunity exists for parts and service, they have some form of PDF or CAD drawing along with the ERP bill of material that they can send us. We're not actually physically scanning documentation. It's really been a long time since we've had to do something like that.
That must be quite a relief for you because that starting from literally a physical document is an absolute nightmare because you have to do character recognition and all sorts of other things to get it into a place where it's digitized properly. But I guess because most of those types of files nowadays are originating from digital systems, then digital outputs are possible, which then you just have to be able to, as you say, recognize and map the particular type of file that they're using into your system and do that in a bulk programmatic way that's repeatable and is consistent for them. And are you finding that, or I guess how often are you finding that a given manufacturer is buying in components? So some of those components might be literally manufactured by them in a factory, but I'm guessing sometimes they are also just doing an assembly. So they might be getting parts from Bosch and they might be getting parts from all sorts of different international parts suppliers. And so how often is it that you then are receiving, for the same manufacturer, you're receiving data in huge variety of formats that maybe are slightly inconsistent because they aren't the manufacturer of every single component on that piece of equipment?
Yeah, so that's true for all of the manufacturers we work with, that they are sometimes manufacturing some portion of the equipment that they assemble and build and sell, but oftentimes there are a large number of purchased products that come from other vendors. So yes, we have to deal with, if they have the exploded drawings and the information from those vendors, we want to make sure that we're getting that data into the catalogs. I think the most important thing to say here is that this is all very seamless for our customers. The effort required and the work required all happens behind the scenes on the Gen Alpha side. And really, all the customer has to do is get us the data, and help us map the data essentially from a customer to a VIN, or a customer to a serial number, or a customer to a model, so that we can associate things properly. In the case of a manufacturer who sells to dealers, they're typically not mapping them to an end user. They just open it for everyone. But we receive the data, and often we don't even have very many questions initially. We just take the data, understand it the way we have gained an understanding from all the different data formats that we have. We process it and very quickly show it to customers to show them how quickly we can handle multiple formats and so on. But yes, vendors and their drawings are a critical piece of making sure that a full bill of material is available for a customer when they need it.
And I'm guessing you also have to, in addition to the niche specific areas that you've just talked about and all the things you have to do to cater to this specific niche, you also still have to support all of the other traditional B2B commerce expectations and needs of the market, like tiered customer groups, price lists down to the individual customer level. Sometimes you'll have pricing groups as opposed to individual price lists. You have to deal with different currencies. You have to deal with different regional requirements. You have to deal with freight and courier integrations and real-time quotes of freight at checkout. And then, of course, the different types of payment methods that exist in the B2B world that just have no equivalent in the B2C, D2C world. The ability to request a quote through the platform and get a response and get the approval through the platform. Different will have different authorities within their child accounts. You might have a senior buyer, junior buyer, and then an approver. But there's a lot of additional complexity within the B2B world that you have to deal with just as a foundational starting point for all the other vertical specific stuff that you do.
You got it. And you rattled off a lot of them. So yes, we have to handle multiple roles. We like to talk about the solution as being highly configurable, which means when we sit down with a manufacturer, and again, maybe this manufacturer has predominantly sold through a dealer network for their entire history. So they're not really ready to sell to an end customer. They can use the solution as a dealer portal, but they can also open the solution to the public, but not display price and availability, but allow an end customer to search for all of the information. But when it comes time to place an order or create a quote, they have to contact the dealer. So we have so many different configurations and roles to support making sure that we're displaying through a digital commerce environment what needs to be displayed. If a manufacturer has a site open to the public, but they don't want to give anonymous users, which is what we would say a guest or anonymous user coming to the site, they're not going to see RMA, they're not going to see warranty. But when a dealer logs in, they're going to now have access to their full complete order history. They're going to be able to reorder, requote. They're going to have saved shopping lists. They're going to have saved configurations. They're going to see warranty and RMA. So things that need to be displayed for some users that won't be displayed for other users. And the list goes on. And something you didn't mention, but is really important to our clients, and it goes into the different payment methods. Of course, we have to integrate to many different credit card providers, but the ability to pay on account is really critical. And we safely integrate to many ERP systems where pulling over the currency for that logged in user, we're displaying the price for that logged in user according to the price that's been established in the ERP system. So we're handling the different tiers. Now, if our customers, for whatever reason, don't have a robust ERP system with APIs available, we have other ways of supporting them. And we can also store data in our database. For whatever reason, again, they weren't using the ERP system for all pricing. But predominantly, most of the manufacturers that we work with have had to have a good solid ERP system and processes around that. So the great thing is a tool like ours leverages all of the work that they've put into that. And we've really designed it for companies that are using their ERP in that manner to make it easier for them when they onboard a solution like ours.
And do you guys also support EDI integration as well? Because I'm guessing that some of the B2B customers of some of these manufacturers are huge, and they don't necessarily want to do manual replenishment purchasing through an e-commerce portal. They want to have EDI orders generated by their ERPs that integrate via EDI into your platform for fulfillment.
Yes, we can support EDI. We can support integrations with Ariba and SmartEquip, any punch out solution. So if any manufacturer out there has those or needs any of those, we can support that as well.
Because I'm guessing that in this game, some of the amounts that we're talking about here this is not your typical B2C, D2C, 150 AOV type scenario. In some of these cases, we're talking tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars for orders. And these guys, they would raise those POs in their own ERP and then just simply need to get it into the manufacturer system for lodgement and fulfillment.
That's right. So EDI would be a great way. The one thing about EDI is it typically comes as a request from your customer. So the manufacturer's customer has to be involved in that process. I think that we're going to see more and more EDI in the future, but right now it's still pretty limited with our customer base, but growing all the time. The other thing is we have a bulk upload so that if a purchasing agent has already created a PO in their system, they can just copy and paste the part numbers and the quantity into our bulk upload and quickly bring that in, and it will load all those parts into a shopping cart, which will then pull over current price and availability, and they can quickly create their order or create a quote. Yes, we have those tools available because they're highly needed in our space. Typically, we have two types of users, right? We have a technical person, service person, or an engineer who doesn't exactly know the part number that they need. So typically they have to go into the bills of materials, or they have to go into an attributed category search to find exactly what they're looking for. But on the other hand, we have purchasing agents or buyers who have been given a list by an engineer or technical service and said, order these, we need them next Friday for a job that's coming in. And these purchasers, they've never seen the product. They don't know what these components look like. So for them, having nice pictures and other things isn't even necessary. They're just looking for a fast way to enter the part numbers that they've received, check availability, check pricing, and get it on order. So we certainly solve for that with our quick order and the bulk upload section of our site.
And how often do you guys have to also solve for back orders, pre-orders, availability dates, split shipments, dealing with an order that then has to be split shipped, and so therefore now the shipping fees associated with that order are going to have to change. So therefore order edits have to happen after the fact, which doesn't usually happen in a B2C, D2C world. So there's quite a few additional complexities in the B2B world when we're talking about these types of use cases that they just don't really exist in the same way in the B2C, D2C world.
Yeah, and in that case, just going to the split shipments, we understand and listen to how our customers are doing business today. So if shipping complete is most often what they're doing, but that's really not usually the case for any of them. It's going to be a reality that they're shipping, especially if they have multiple line item orders, that they have multiple shipments and they have multiple invoices against an order. So really what we're doing through the integration is we're taking that information from the integration. If it doesn't make sense to display freight up front, and our customers aren't even giving their customers freight information in advance because of whatever reason it currently exists with the business, we can say actual freight to be applied. There's all types of messaging and other things that we can do with a manufacturer. It really is going to depend on whether they want to be giving the freight costs up front or whether some might order on collect. In our world, there are just so many different variables for this. We have to understand what the customer is doing today, what they would like to be doing in digital, what's possible, and then just display that information for the customer as it comes. It's common that we'll have, again, multiple shipments with multiple tracking information and multiple invoices where you will need to have access to the packing slips, to that tracking information for the multiple, and access to the multiple invoices. We handle all of that through the integration.
Wow, sounds very impressive. And you guys you're a SaaS solution, so there's no, on the part of the merchant, there's no requirement for infrastructure, security patching, upgrades, maintenance, etc. You're a full end-to-end SaaS solution?
You got it. We do 12 product releases a year. We are an agile company, so we have the agile methodology. We have a complete backlog that is with features and enhancements and ideas that come directly from our customers and come from the research we do. We're often paying attention to retail because retail is sometimes ahead of B2B. And then we're also looking at what others are doing in the B2B space. And we get ideas that go into our backlog, and we have continuous releases. And some of those releases have been upgrades to our analytics platform. We had 1 year. We included RMA and warranty and a product configurator. These all become options for our customers as we bring it into our solution. And then we just keep enhancing it month over month.
Wow, absolutely amazing. And presumably you're on a subscription model being a SaaS platform. So how do you guys make your money? How do you charge for your platform?
Yeah, we have 3 components that go into every implementation, and that is an onboarding, which is typically just a one-time fixed fee. We have the integration costs. That again will be a one-time fixed fee. Maybe we're integrating to an ERP system. We might be integrating to 3 ERP systems if it's a large organization that does business across multiple organizations that have multiple ERPs. We might be integrating to a credit card provider. We might be integrating to a CRM system. We might be integrating to a PIM, like you mentioned earlier. So there's an integration. So that's the second component, that one-time fee. And then there's the SaaS subscription fee that as well.
And like, just to give everyone an idea of what kind of monthly, we know you're not a Shopify or a BigCommerce. We know you're a vertical specific B2B commerce platform. And so we have the expectation that's an enterprise class system and usually has an enterprise price associated with it. But what would the typical cost that a B2B merchant would need to pay to access your platform on a monthly fee basis?
Yeah, Jason, this is certainly going to vary by the size of the organization and really the number of brands and the number of ERP systems. So maintenance is around what we are in fact maintaining. But if you're a single manufacturer with a single ERP system, single brand, you'd probably be on average around $85,000 annually with our solution.
Yep, and that makes sense, right? I mean, we're talking $7 to $8 grand a month, which when you're a large B2B organization, really to have this functionality, which really delivers your entire digital channel holistically, that's a very reasonable cost for a company that I'm guessing in many instances. Are you dealing with manufacturers where they are going digital and enabling e-commerce for the very first time, or are you oftentimes replacing an existing legacy e-commerce platform? What is the kind of split between first-time implementations versus replacements?
Yeah, so sitting here today talking to you, 68% of our clients have re-platformed. That used to be a higher number, so we are seeing more and more manufacturers who are doing digital commerce for the first time are now starting to enter. But in our early days, we were really the early adopters of these types of solutions. We're finding that they were on platforms that just weren't working for them anymore, and we're looking for something that they needed to upgrade to. A high number of our clients have re-platformed. The other 32% have done it for the first time. And we have I would say a good mix of both.
Wow, that statistic is exactly the inverse of what I naturally thought it would be. But then when you described why, it makes complete sense to me, right? Because anybody who would be looking to make, like, obviously when you guys first started out, anybody looking to make that kind of significant investment in their digital channels was probably already making investments in digital channels, and then they were taking a significant upgrade path to get onto your platform. So yeah, I guess when you explain it to me that way, it makes absolute sense. But my gut would have told me that because of the legacy nature of B2B, full stop. And what I'm seeing in a lot of my consulting is I'm helping B2B brands to get online for the very first time, because They had massive amounts of field sales reps, for example, and that's how they always did business. And then when COVID came along and they couldn't do business in person anymore, and they couldn't have their BDRs and BDMs and field sales teams taking orders on behalf of customers, then all of a sudden they had to quickly establish digital routes to market and e-commerce routes to market, because that's what their customers were wanting. That's what they were expecting. That's what they were asking for. But in your case, I guess because of the nuances of your specific industry, the ones that wanted to make the investments earliest would have had to have been early adopters of digital, full stop.
Yeah. And I think it still continues to be surprising to me that there aren't more coming faster for the first time. I think that we're starting to see that shift. And the message that I would have to manufacturers who still need to do it the first time is 68% of our clients are already on their second or third generation digital commerce platform. So you really will start falling behind if you don't start adopting these technologies. It is time to get in this space. And I always encourage people, I think for many companies, they've thought, oh, we have a dealer network, so we don't need a digital commerce platform for our parts and service. Hey, your dealers need better tools too. And they're seeking information faster to serve, of course, your end customer. We need to have better digital tools for all of the people in that supply chain. So I would encourage your listeners to get started, to reach out to the companies that can support them on this journey. We talked about a lot of things here today: warranty, RMA, product configurator, e-commerce, interactive parts manuals. With our solution, you don't have to start with all of that. You start where your biggest need is or where the biggest challenge is. We can be a standalone e-commerce site if that's what a manufacturer needs. We can have a standalone interactive parts manuals site for our manufacturers so that at least people can get up-to-date product information. So start there and then turn on e-commerce and then turn on RMA and then get to warranty, right? So these things can happen in phases. The move to digital commerce is a journey. Nothing happens overnight here. And it is a sales channel. It is where your customers, your dealers, your partners are going to interact with you. It's an important part of the experience of doing business with you. So it will continually be changing and evolving as well. So that's what I like to get people thinking about it, is don't get overwhelmed with all that it can be, but make the decision to start, because really that's the most important. You don't want to be left behind today, and start at one place and then just keep improving. Your dealers and customers will be so glad for it. So I guess that would be my message around.
Listen, if I can lend any weight to that, I would absolutely echo that. That data from DC 360 shows that still in the United States, in excess of 40% of B2B commerce transactions are manual today. So that tells you the size of the opportunity. Of the ones that are digital today, the vast majority are EDI. So
Yep.
very small percentage of B2B transactions today, as a percentage of the total, are done through e-commerce channels, and the vast majority are manual or EDI driven. And so the reality is that for smaller and mid-market brands and manufacturers, I think that's where, because the biggest end of town, the vast majority of that's going to be EDI. But for mid-enterprise all the way up to the bottom end of very large enterprise, e-commerce is what your customers expect today, because in their daily lives, when they're not buying from B2B suppliers like you, they're buying in their B2C and D2C worlds from home, and they're expecting at least that level of functionality, but and more in their B2B buying roles. And that, I think, for me, is probably the biggest message that I'd like to get out there alongside your message, is that it's no longer good enough to just simply send a print catalog and say, they'll worry about it, or they'll figure out how to integrate with us via EDI and integrate directly with our ERP or whatever. It's just not good enough. The buyers that are out there are, in many cases, a newer, younger generation of buyers that in their daily life, they are used to doing things online via e-commerce, and they absolutely have a base expectation that same level of service will be provided in their B2B buying life.
I couldn't say it any better, Jason. Such a great message for the audience to hear. And I'll just pile on one more, is that I absolutely love the manufacturing industry. Equipment manufacturers are creating the tools that we need to make the world go around. We need to make sure that they're relevant here in the future. And in order for all aspects and all companies to be relevant, they've got to get on board with these tools. So it really is time. And I just love what you shared there.
Thank you. And what for you is on your radar? I know that you very much are a led product development model, and you've got this roadmap, and you have these 12 consistent releases every year. But if you were to look out, say 6 months from now, what is the highest piece of priority functionality, or 2 or 3 pieces of functionality that you would love to get out there and get live, that your customers are really wanting and asking for over, say, the next 6 months?
Yeah, I would say telematics is one that we are really excited about, and really it's just integrating to the smart technology that might already be on these equipment as they're operating. So again, if your customer's logging in and they're ordering parts, or they're looking up their equipment, or they're looking up their purchase order history, why not also be able to see the status of the equipment in operation and understand if there are any alarms, if there are any warnings, if there's any preventive maintenance activities that could occur because of something, that the hours or the miles on the piece of equipment. We would really like to work with manufacturers with that technology that already exists. We really can't go here without them. So we need the information related to what they're using to tie that back into our solution to make it that much more powerful for the user. Eventually, I think it's possible that people won't even have to look through a catalog. When the equipment is that smart that we know what it needs, then when a user logs in, we can just indicate to them, these items have been added to your cart because it's time for this particular maintenance now. Or there's an urgent need because the equipment is down, and through the telemetry, we know exactly what is needed for that. Now, in talking to manufacturers, far away from fully getting there, but at least reading what's existing and tying those to our solution is something that we'd like to take a step in. And we do have some manufacturing clients where their products going out the door today have that information on the unit or the piece of equipment, and we want to make that available inside our site as well.
I think that's an amazing ambition, and I think even getting to a point where manufacturers are at the very least putting things like QR codes on their items, on their products, on their components, to where they can easily be scanned, and it will take you directly to that product page or that product schematic explosion or whatever it might be, just to make it easier for the identification and linkage process to happen and reduce some of that search and find friction that exists today, especially between subtle nuances between models and component versions and succession and precession. I think just that alone, even if it wasn't completely automated through smart tech and telemetry, just being able to have some super smart linkages between these QR codes and the components and or the products and models and versions themselves, that alone, I think, could remove a truckload of friction in the buying process.
Yeah, let's go off of that a little bit, Jason, because I think you're bringing up something that I agree with you wholeheartedly. If I could walk up to the piece of equipment and just scan, and it either brought up that bill of, so just for people listening, a QR code is simply a URL. So this functionality already exists in Gen Alpha's Equip 360 solution. What doesn't exist is manufacturers putting that QR code either on the piece of equipment or on the specific component, so that when a change out needs to occur. Now, I know that in some environments, it's going to get so dirty that the QR code wouldn't even be available, but that's not true for all things. At least just a QR code on the machine, so that when somebody's standing out there with their mobile device, they just quickly scan it, and there pops up the bill of material, and they can search through that. Now, if it was a QR code on a part number, a specific bearing is probably a little bit harder just because of the way that you store and handle a bearing. But let's use a gear case or something like that, where the QR code is there and visible. They scan that gear case, and immediately they're taken to the product page of the gear case. They can quickly see price and availability of that gear case, add it to their shopping cart, check out, and be on their way. These things are available today. Manufacturers just have to start utilizing things like QR codes and making it that much easier, reducing that friction, like you mentioned, Jason.
Couldn't agree more. Listen, we could talk for another 3 hours. I've got 100 other questions I could ask you about linking through from the dealers that are actually selling the goods and having those dealers assigned to specific end user accounts and pass through purchasing. And there's 100 other things I could talk to you about today, but I won't take any more of your time because I think we've covered a lot of good ground, but I'll definitely get you back on again in the future to talk a little bit more about these things. But it's very exciting what you're doing. And for you, I love the fact that you're taking on B2B because it's a beast of a thing to take on in the first place. It's got so much more nuance and complexity to it than D2C, B2C, combined with the verticalized expertise and specialist knowledge that you have and you bring to bear on your platform. I think the world needs more people like you and more technologies like yours in the market. If we want more B2Bs to take on e-commerce as a core channel as part of their business, then a lot of these verticals, they need vertical specific solutions because they are so unique. And so you're effectively helping to remove the excuse that people working in your industry have for not adopting digital channels, because you are able to give them the tooling that they need to run their businesses the way they want to, but in an automated fashion in many respects. So kudos to you for bringing this to market, because it's a beast of a challenge to tackle. And you obviously been at this for a long time. You've been at this based on your expertise and based on your knowledge. You've been at this over a decade. So congratulations on bringing this to market. You've done a really good job.
Thank you, Jason. And I want to commend the entire Gen Alpha team. Certainly, this is not a solution brought by one individual. This is multiple individuals that are phenomenal. Our customers really enjoy working with our team because we are advisors and we understand the unique challenges that they face. And I just appreciate the opportunity to speak to your audience and have this discussion with you. So thanks so much for inviting me to talk about our solution and how we're helping manufacturers today.
Really enjoyed it. And we're now at the chance where we're coming down to the end of our time together. And now I get to flip the script. I get to hand the microphone over to you to ask me one question, any question you like. It can be personal, it can be professional. And I would absolutely love to hand the microphone over to you, Kris Harrington from Gen Alpha. What's your question for me today?
We always like to listen and learn from an outsider's view. So you now have a good view of our entire solution and some of the challenges we help solve. And I mentioned telematics is on my mind and on our mind as a company. What would you think needs to be on our mind as we look out in the future?
Look, I think that, and you guys are probably already thinking about this anyway, but I think that AI technology is becoming democratized through technologies like ChatGPT. They are going to transform every single aspect of e-commerce, and we're already seeing it start to happen today with the marriage of machine vision and machine learning and AI and conversational AI and large language models. We're already seeing a little bit of this starting to seep into the industry with the likes of Shopify, where you can automatic product descriptions using ChatGPT and machine vision, where it can effectively scan an image of a product. It will recognize what it is. If it's a purple polka dot dress, then it will give a fully eloquent product description based on what the image is and what it can see as part of the product catalog. And I think that the vast majority of brands out there, whether they're B2B or B2C, the reality is that they are never going to integrate their systems directly with something like ChatGPT or AWS's AI as a service model. That's not going to happen. And so the only way that they're really going to be able to tap and leverage AI in any kind of big way in their business is through the technology partners that they already work with. And so I think that being able to integrate AI into your technology, the large language models, and being able to automate some of the processes that they currently do manually, I think that to me is going to bring so much value and so much momentum and speed to the processes of getting onboarded into e-commerce and maintaining and extending their e-commerce functionality over time, that really thinking of creative ways in which you can bring those large language models and AI into your tech, that's the only way that some of these companies, that's the only way they're ever going to be able to use it in their own businesses. That feels like a relatively significant piece of low-hanging fruit for you guys.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you said that one, because when you asked me the question, I had two answers: AI or machine learning to go down that path, or telematics. And I chose the telematics, but the reality is both of them are very near and dear to us in the near term as things that we're looking at, we're actively reviewing, and we know that types of solutions are going to be part of our Equip 360, and they're just going to keep evolving. The time is coming for both. So I'm glad that was your answer.
Thanks. Yeah, I knew it was probably high on your priority list, so it makes absolute sense that would be the case. And how would you prefer that people get a hold of you if they want to learn more about Gen Alpha and Equip 360? Just for everybody's knowledge, Gen Alpha, GenAlpha.com, and then under solutions, Equip 360 is what we were talking about today as a platform. Would you prefer they just go there, click on demo, and they can schedule a demo in with you? Would you prefer that people get a hold of you on LinkedIn? Both?
Yeah, you can contact us through the website. You can fill out the demo form, or please connect with me on LinkedIn. I try to be very active on LinkedIn, sharing different information in the community and being a helpful resource. So maybe you're not quite ready today, give me a connection request or follow me on LinkedIn, Christina Harrington. Christina's with a K. We'd love to connect with you. We also have a Gen Alpha page on LinkedIn as well. So thank you again, Jason. Really appreciate this opportunity. Enjoyed the discussion.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I have seriously enjoyed this, and I really appreciate you taking your time today to share with me not only about your technology, but also the nuances of the industries that you play in based on your decades of experience in the space. So thank you so much, and I look forward to getting you back on the podcast soon. If you're into B2B commerce and you'd like to be a guest on B2B Commerce Corner, then just send an email to jason@greenwoodconsulting.net and we can explore it.